Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything.
Tell us.
Where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. The blood on Nicholas Romano's hands had long since dried, but he could still feel its phantom warmth as he stood in the marble lobby of Romano Industries at 3:47 a.m. The building should have been empty, secured by codes only he and his head of security knew, yet the soft click of heels against marble echoed through the silence like a death knell. He turned slowly, his gray eyes catching the reflection of emergency lighting in the polished floors. Emma Clark emerged from the shadows near the reception desk. But this wasn't the mousy evening receptionist he barely acknowledged. Gone were the oversized glasses and shapeless cardigan. In their place stood a woman whose honey-colored hair fell in waves around a face that could launch wars. Her green eyes held secrets darker than the midnight dress that clung to her curves like liquid starlight. "Hello, Nicholas." Her voice carried an accent he'd never noticed before. Something European that made his name sound like a prayer or a curse. "We need to talk." His hand instinctively moved toward the Glock tucked beneath his jacket. 3 years she'd worked for him. 3 years of invisible presence while he built his empire on foundations of concrete and blood. The architectural firm was just the surface, the respectable face that hid Romano Industries' true business dealings with the Bratva, the Russian mob that owned half of New York's underground. "Emma." He kept his voice steady, though his pulse hammered against his throat. Interesting time for a performance review. She stepped closer, and he caught her scent, not the cheap drugstore perfume he expected, but something expensive, dangerous. Chanel mixed with gunpowder. "I know what you did to Viktor Petrov tonight." The name hit him like a physical blow. Viktor's blood was still under his fingernails, the memory of the warehouse confrontation fresh as an open wound. The Russian had been skimming from their money laundering operation, thinking Nicholas was just another pretty boy architect playing at being dangerous. Viktor had been wrong, fatally wrong. "I don't know what you're talking about," Nicholas is. Fingers tightened on his gun grip. "I think you should go home, Emma. Sleep off whatever this is." Her laugh was music wrapped in razor wire. "My real name is Anya Volkov. Viktor was my brother." The lobby tilted around Nicholas like a ship in a storm. For 3 years, Volkov had sat 20 feet from his office, handling his calls, organizing his files, watching him with those impossibly green eyes. The Volkovs were legends in the Russian underworld, a family that had bled and killed their way across to continents before disappearing into myth. "Impossible," he breathed. "The Volkovs are dead. Wiped out in Prague 5 years ago. Reports of our death were greatly exaggerated." Amelia reached into her purse with deliberate slowness, withdrawing not a weapon, but a photograph. She placed it on the marble reception desk between them like a challenge. "Viktor wasn't just skimming your money, Nicholas. He was trying to buy back something your father took from us long ago." Nicholas looked at the photograph and felt his world crack along invisible fault lines. It showed his father, Antonio Romano, shaking hands with a man who looked exactly like Viktor Petrov, but younger. In the background, a little girl with honey-colored hair clutched a woman's hand. "Your father destroyed my family," Amelia continued, her voice soft as silk, sharp as a blade. "He used our trust to feed information to our enemies in Prague. My parents died because of him. My younger sister died because of him. Viktor and I spent 5 years becoming ghosts, learning your business, working our way close enough to collect the debt. And now Viktor's dead," Nicholas said, understanding flooding through him like ice water. "So the debt falls to you." She nodded, and in that simple gesture, he saw death and desire intertwined like lovers. "I've spent 3 years studying you, Nicholas. Learning your routines, your weaknesses, your fears. I've watched you build this empire on the bones of the families you've destroyed. I know about the money laundering, the protection rackets, the bodies buried in the foundations of your buildings. Then you know killing me won't be easy." Who said anything about killing you? Her smile was Venus rising from blood-dark water. Death would be a mercy. I have something much more intimate in mind. She walked toward him with predatory grace, closing the distance until he could count the gold flecks in her green eyes. This close, he could see the small scar along her jawline, the callus on her trigger finger, the way her chest rose and fell with carefully controlled breathing. I'm going to destroy everything you love, she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. Your business, your reputation, your sense of control. I'm going to take it piece by piece while you watch, helpless to stop me. And the beautiful part is, you're going to help me do it. Why would I do that? She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, and in her gaze he saw a truth that terrified him more than any threat. He wanted her. Despite everything, despite knowing she was a killer sent to destroy him, his body responded to her proximity like metal to magnet. Because, she said, pressing something cold and sharp against his throat, you're already falling in love with me, just like I planned. The blade at his throat was thin as paper, sharp enough to part skin without him feeling it. But it wasn't the weapon that paralyzed him. It was the realization that she was right. Somewhere in the space between recognition and revelation, between fear and fascination, something fundamental had shifted inside his chest. 3 years, he said, his voice rough with admiration and horror. You've been playing the long game. For 3 years. The best revenge is a dish served cold, as you Russians say. Her free hand traced the line of his jaw with mock tenderness. But don't worry, Nicholas. The next part will be much more heated. The knife disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the whispered line of blood on his throat, as proof it had ever existed. She stepped back, once again the composed predator in midnight blue. Go home, she said, echoing his earlier words. Clean Victor's blood from under your nails. Dream about me. Tomorrow, the real game begins. She turned and walked toward the exit with the same unhurried confidence with which she'd entered, her heels clicking a rhythm that would haunt his dreams. At the door she paused without looking back. Oh, and Nicholas, that charity gala you're throwing next weekend? I'll be there. Save me a dance. The glass doors closed behind her with a whisper, leaving Nicholas alone in the marble tomb of his empire. Bleeding from a wound so shallow it would heal by morning, but knowing that Anya Volkov had cut him far deeper than skin. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. Consider it a gift from your new business partner. With trembling fingers, he opened his email to find a video file. Viktor Petrov's murder, filmed from an angle that showed Nicholas's face clearly as he pulled the trigger. Below it, a single line of text. Tomorrow, we discuss terms. Nicholas Romano, who had built an empire on fear and violence, felt true terror for the first time in his life. Not because Anya Volkov wanted to destroy him, but because part of him wanted to let her. The coffee tasted like ash in Nicholas's mouth as he sat across from Anya, in the small cafe 6 blocks from Romano Industries. She'd chosen the location, of course, just as she'd chosen everything else about this meeting. A public place where violence would be noticed, but intimate enough for the kind of conversation that could end empires. She looked different in daylight, softer somehow, wearing a simple cream sweater and jeans that made her seem almost normal, almost human. The illusion lasted until she smiled, and he saw the predator lurking behind those forest green eyes. You didn't sleep well, she observed, stirring sugar into her cappuccino with delicate precision. I can tell by the way you're holding your shoulders. Too rigid, you're expecting an attack. Can you blame me? Nicholas kept his voice low, conscious of the other patrons scattered throughout the cafe. A businessman reading the Wall Street Journal, a mother with twin toddlers. Normal people living normal lives, unaware they were sharing space with 2 killers negotiating terms of war. You showed me footage of a murder I committed, a murder you committed in my family's warehouse. Using information Victor gave you about the location, her spoon clinked against the ceramic cup like a small bell tolling. He thought he was setting a trap for you, but he was really setting one for himself. I made sure of that. Implications hit Nicholas like a physical blow. You fed him false information? You wanted me to kill him? Victor was weak, emotional. He wanted to charge in with guns blazing, take revenge the old way. She shrugged with practiced indifference. He would have gotten us both killed and accomplished nothing. This way his death serves a purpose, which is binding you to me. She leaned forward slightly and he caught that dangerous scent again. Violence wrapped in vanilla and desire. That video isn't just evidence, Nicholas. It's a chain. Now you're complicit in your own destruction. A laugh escaped his throat, bitter as burned coffee. You want me to help you destroy myself? I want you to choose. Her finger traced the rim of her cup in slow circles. Option 1. I release that video to the FBI, the media, your business partners. Your empire crumbles in a matter of hours. You spend the rest of your life in federal prison if the Russians don't kill you first for betraying their trust. And option 2, you work with me. Help me dismantle your father's legacy piece by piece. Every dirty deal, every buried secret, every drop of innocent blood on the Romano name gets exposed and burned away until nothing remains but ash and regret. Nicholas studied her face, looking for tells, for cracks in the perfect mask she wore. And what do you get out of watching me commit professional suicide? Justice. The word came out soft as a prayer, hard as a gravestone. My parents were good people, Nicholas. They ran a small import business, completely legitimate. Your father convinced them to store some packages, told them it was artwork from Russia. When the packages turned out to be weapons bound for a terrorist cell, my parents were the ones who took the fall. She pulled out another photograph. This one showing a woman who looked like an older version of Amelia standing beside a tall man. With kind eyes and calloused hands, they were smiling, their arms around each other, and 2 young girls. They died in prison. Murdered by inmates who'd been paid to send a message about cooperating with federal investigations. Her voice remained steady, but Nicholas saw her knuckles whiten around the coffee cup. My sister Anya was 14 when we went into hiding. She killed herself 2 years later because she couldn't handle living like a ghost. I'm sorry. His words felt inadequate, hollow, but they were all he had. Are you? She tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining a specimen. Or are you just sorry you got caught in the crossfire? The honest answer would damn him, but Nicholas had learned that lies only worked when both parties wanted to believe them. Both. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or respect? At least you're honest about being a bastard. My father was a lot of things, but I'm not him. Nicholas pushed his untouched coffee aside, leaning forward to match her posture. The money laundering, the protection rackets, all of it. I inherited a system, but I've been trying to clean it up. Go legitimate. Bullshit. Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. I've seen your books, remember? The Petrov operation was your idea. You expanded into weapons trafficking last year. You've been doubling down on everything your father built, because the alternative was war with the Bratva. Nicholas felt something crack inside his chest, a dam holding back years of rationalization and self-hatred. You think I wanted this life? You think I chose to wake up every morning knowing that people are dead because of decisions I made? Then, why do it? Because the moment I show weakness, the moment I try to go soft, every enemy my father made comes crawling out of the shadows to settle old scores. He ran his hands through his hair, feeling older than his 34 years. At least when I'm in control, I can limit the damage. Try to keep innocent people out of the crossfire. Like my family. The words hung between them like a blade poised. To fall? Nicholas looked at this woman who had haunted his dreams, who had spent 3 years learning his secrets while he barely noticed her existence. He felt something shift inside his chest. Not love, it was too early for that. Too complicated, but recognition. The acknowledgement of a kindred spirit trapped in circumstances beyond their control. If your family was before my time, he said finally. But if I could undo what my father did, I would. Prove it. How? She reached into her purse and withdrew a USB drive, placing it on the table between them like a chess piece. This contains everything I've gathered over the past 3 years. Bank records, phone transcripts, locations of offshore accounts, names of corrupt officials on your payroll. Enough evidence to bring down not just you, but the entire network. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm offering you a choice. Her hand covered his, and he felt the calluses on her fingers, the slight tremor that betrayed her composure. "Help me use this information the right way. We work together to dismantle the operation systematically. Make sure the money gets back to the people it was stolen from. Ensure the corrupt officials face justice while the innocent employees get protection and new jobs. And in return, you get to sleep at night without seeing the faces of the people you've killed." Her grip tightened on his hand. "Now you get a chance to build something clean from the ashes of your father's empire. You get redemption." Stared at the USB drive, knowing it represented either salvation or damnation, possibly both. "What's the catch?" "The catch is that I'm asking you to trust someone whose brother you killed less than 24 hours ago." Her smile was sad and dangerous and heartbreakingly beautiful. "The catch is that once we start down this path, there's no going back. Your old life dies, your old allies become enemies, and the only thing standing between you and a bullet is a woman who has every reason to want you dead. And if I say no, then I become your worst nightmare." The softness vanished from her. Voice like smoke. "I use every piece of information on this drive to destroy you slowly, publicly, and completely. I make you watch as everything you've built crumbles to dust, and then I kill you with my own hands." Nicholas looked around the cafe at the ordinary. People living ordinary lives. People who went to sleep at night without blood on their hands or ghosts in their dreams. He thought about Viktor Petrov's suppressed expression as the bullet found its mark. About his father's legacy of violence and corruption. About the woman sitting across from him who had orchestrated this entire conversation with the precision of a master manipulator. "Okay," he said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. "I'm in." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He picked up the USB drive, feeling its weight like a promise or a curse. "But I have one condition, which is, when this is over, when we've burned it all down and made whatever amends we can make, you tell me your real name. Not Anya Volkov. Not Emma Clark, but who you actually are underneath all the masks." For the first time since he'd known her, she looked genuinely surprised. "Why does that matter?" "Because if I'm going to help you destroy my life, I want to know who I'm doing it for." She stood to leave, and for a moment her hand rested on his shoulder with something that might have been tenderness. "Ask me again when we're both still alive." At the end of this, as she walked away, Nicholas realized he was already counting the minutes until he would see her again. The charity gala at the Plaza Hotel sparkled like a jewel box. Manhattan's elite draped in silk and diamonds, while champagne flowed like water. Nicholas moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and making small talk, but his eyes kept scanning for honey-colored hair and forest green eyes. He found her near the auction display, studying a painting by a dead Russian artist with an expression he couldn't read. The transformation was complete gone, was every trace of the mousy receptionist, or even the dangerous woman from the cafe. Tonight she was pure sophistication, in a black gown that hugged her curves like liquid shadow, her hair swept up to reveal the elegant line of her neck. "Kandinsky," she said, without turning around as he approached. "My father loved his work, said it was like seeing music made visible. I didn't know you'd be here." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. He'd thought, "Of nothing else for the past week? Your assistant sent me an invitation." She turned to face him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emma Clark, evening receptionist, cordially invited to attend the annual Romano Industries charity gala. I thought it would be rude to refuse. Emma Clark doesn't exist anymore, doesn't she?" Her hand brushed his arm as a waiter passed with champagne. To anyone watching, they looked like employer and employee making polite conversation. Because everyone here sees Emma, sweet, invisible, forgettable Emma, who answers phones and organizes files. "I see you." The words came out rougher than he'd intended, laden with meanings he wasn't ready to examine. Something flickered in her. A surprise, perhaps a recognition of a truth neither of them wanted to acknowledge. "Careful, Nicholas." Her voice was soft enough that he had to lean closer to hear it. "People are watching." He glanced around and saw she was right. James Mitchell, his business partner, stood near the bar with a frown of confusion. Several board members looked their way with curiosity. Nicholas Romano didn't notice staff, let alone engage in intimate conversation with the help. "Dance." "With me?" he said suddenly. "That would raise questions." Let it. He offered his hand with the same decisive gesture that had built empires and ended lives. I don't care what they think. For a moment he thought she would refuse, leave him standing there with his hand extended like a fool. Then she placed her fingers in his palm, and electricity shot through him like he'd touched a live wire. The orchestra was playing something slow and melancholy, perfect for the way she fit against him as they moved onto the dance floor. And she was smaller than he'd realized, her head barely reaching his shoulder. But she moved with the fluid grace of someone trained in violence and elegance both. This is dangerous, she murmured against his ear. Everything about you is dangerous. I mean it, Nicholas. People in our world don't get happy endings. We get bullets and betrayals and shallow graves. Then maybe we should stop being part of that world. She pulled back to look at him, and he saw something vulnerable flicker across her face before the mask slipped back into place. You can't just walk away from what we are. We're trying, aren't we? That's what this whole plan is about.
Oh.
The plan is about justice, revenge, not redemption. Maybe they're the same thing. The song ended, but neither of them stepped away. Around them, the gala continued in a blur of laughter and clinking glasses, but Nicholas felt like they were alone in a bubble of tension and possibility. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear it. About Victor, about why I really needed him dead. Before she could continue, James Mitchell appeared beside them with his politician's smile and calculating eyes. Nicholas, you sly dog, going to introduce me to your lovely companion. Nicholas felt Amelia stiffen in his arms, her fingers tightening on his shoulder in a warning he didn't understand. James, this is Emma Clark, our evening receptionist. Emma. James's smile widened, but something predatory lurked behind his charm. I feel like we've met before. You look so familiar. I have one of those faces, she replied smoothly. But Nicholas caught the slight accent creeping into her voice, the way her free hand moved toward her purse where he suspected she kept a weapon. No, I'm sure of it. James stepped closer, studying her with the intensity of a hunter who'd caught a scent. It was somewhere in Europe, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Prague, I think. The blood drained from Amelia's face so quickly Nicholas thought she might faint. In that moment, he understood with crystal clarity that James Mitchell wasn't just his business partner and childhood friend. James had been there. James had known about Prague, about the Volkovs, about what really happened to Amelia's family. Think you're mistaken, Amelia said, but her voice had gone thin and brittle. Maybe. James's smile turned into something sharp enough to cut. But I never forget a face, especially one that beautiful. We should catch up sometime, talk about old friends. He walked away with casual confidence, leaving Nicholas and Amelia frozen on the dance floor like two people who'd just watched a bomb explode in slow motion. We need to leave, she whispered. Right now. Amelia, what? Don't say that name. Her nails dug into his arm hard enough to draw blood through his jacket. Not here, not ever. Do you understand me? He looked around the ballroom and saw James, near the bar, speaking quietly into his phone while his eyes tracked their movement. Several men in expensive suits had positioned themselves near the exitsman Nicholas recognized as security. But not his security. The ladies' room, he said. Meet me by the service elevator in 5 minutes. She nodded and slipped away through the crowd, moving like smoke between conversations. Nicholas forced himself to make small talk with donors and investors, counting seconds while his heart hammered against his ribs. When 5 minutes had passed, he excused himself and made his way toward the service corridor. She was waiting by the elevator, but she wasn't alone. James stood behind her with a gun pressed against her spine, his charming smile replaced by something cold and calculating. Nicholas, my old friend. James's voice carried the tone of disappointment and betrayal. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize Anya Volkov when she walked into my party? Anya? Nicholas looked at the woman he'd known as Emma, as Amelia. Seeing her clearly for the first time, it's not the older sister, but the younger one, the one who was supposed to be dead. But you said... I said she killed herself 2 years after Prague. Her voice was steady despite the gun at her back. Never said I was Amelia. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Everything, the elaborate setup, the 3 years of preparation, the careful manipulation, it had all been orchestrated by a girl who'd been 14 when her world ended. A girl who'd spent 5 years becoming someone else, becoming something else. Driven by grief and rage and the kind of desperate love that turns children into monsters. Anya Volkov, James continued conversationally. The little sister. We thought you died with the rest of your family in Prague, but apparently you're harder to kill than we expected. Why? Nicholas's question came out as a croak. Why are you doing this, James? Because your father was getting soft in his old age? Started talking about getting out of the business, making amends for past mistakes. James's laugh was bitter. The Prague operation was supposed to send a message about what happens to people who betray the Romano family. But Antonio wanted to call it off at the last minute, save the Volkovs, go legitimate like some kind of saint. So you made sure the message got sent anyway. And now the last little Volkov comes crawling back for revenge, and you're stupid enough to fall for her act. James pressed the gun harder against Anya's spine. Did you really think she cared about you, Nicholas? Did you think this was some kind of love story? Nicholas looked at Anya, not Emma, not Amelia, but Anya. The broken girl who'd built herself into a weapon and saw tears streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. I wasn't supposed to. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, Nicholas. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what? But even as he asked, he knew. The USB drive. The plan to dismantle his empire systematically. It had been too perfect, too convenient. The information on that drive, James said with satisfaction. It doesn't just implicate you, Nicholas. It implicates me, our partners, everyone in the organization. She was never planning to help you go legitimate. She was planning to burn us all down and disappear into the wind. Is it true? Nicholas asked, though his heart already knew the answer. Anya met his eyes, and in them he saw the truth she'd been hiding. She was exactly as broken as he was, exactly as trapped, and exactly as desperate for something real in a world built on lies, yes, she whispered. But the gunshot was deafeningly loud in the confined space. For a moment, Nicholas thought James had killed her. Then he saw James falling backward, blood spreading across his expensive shirt. Saw the small pistol in Anya's hand that she'd somehow drawn from her purse. But I changed my mind, she finished softly. James gasped from the floor, clutching his chest. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've just done. They'll never stop hunting you now. Either of you. Anya knelt beside him, her face a mask of grief and determination. I know exactly what I've done. I've chosen him over my revenge. I've chosen love over justice. I've chosen to save the man whose family destroyed mine. She looked up at Nicholas with tears still streaming down her face. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I was going to destroy you. But I'm not sorry I changed my mind. James's breathing was growing shallow, his eyes growing dim. With his last breath, he managed to whisper, "Run." Nicholas pulled Anya to her feet, seeing sirens flashing through the windows of the hotel, hearing shouts from the ballroom as someone discovered James's security team unconscious in the service corridor. We need to go, he said. Right now? Where? I don't know. He took her hand, bloody and trembling, in his. Somewhere they'll never find us. As they ran toward the service exit, Nicholas realized that everything he'd thought he knew about love and loyalty and betrayal had been wrong. The woman he was running with had destroyed his life completely, and somehow that made him love her more, not less. Asterisk, the safe house in upstate New York was a relic from Nicholas's father's paranoid days. A cabin hidden deep in the Adirondacks, stocked with supplies and weapons, completely off the grid. They'd been there for 3 days, 3 days of rain and silence and the slow, careful work of learning who they really were underneath all the lies. Anya sat on the couch, wrapped in one of his shirts, her honey-colored hair falling loose around her shoulders as she cleaned the Glock she'd taken from James's body. Her movements were precise, methodical, hypnotic in their efficiency. She'd learned to care for weapons the same way other children learn to tie their shoes. You're staring, she said without looking up. Sorry. Nicholas turned back to the laptop, scrolling through the encrypted files she'd shown him. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in 12 different countries, a network of corruption and violence that stretched back 40 years. I'm still trying to understand how you did all this. It's 3 years of intelligence gathering, and it's more complete than anything the FBI has. I had help. She set the gun aside and pulled her knees to her chest. The FSB doesn't forgive or forget, especially when American criminals interfere with their operations. They've been hunting your father's organization for decades. Your Russian intelligence They recruited me after Prague, trained me, gave me a new identity. But when I got close to you, when I started to understand what kind of man you really are, she shrugged. I stopped reporting back, went rogue. Nicholas closed the laptop and moved to sit beside her on the couch. In the firelight, she looked impossibly young, too young to carry the weight of everything she'd endured. Tell me about her, he said quietly. Your sister, the real Amelia. Pain flickered across her face like lightning. Bad. She was everything I'm not. Beautiful, confident, fearless. She could walk into any room and make people fall in love with her just by smiling. When our parents died, she became my whole world. She protected me, took care of me, taught me how to survive. What happened? To her? The same thing that happened to everyone else I've ever loved. Her voice broke on the last word. She got too close to the fire and burned up. Nicholas reached for her hand, and she let him take it, her fingers cold despite the warmth from the fireplace. Anya, that's not my real name either. Hey, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've had so many names, so many identities. I sometimes forget who I started out as. The girl who died in Prague was Anya Volkov. Anya was my first cover identity with the FSB. Emma was the mask I wore to get close to you. And now, I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. You're the woman who chose to save me instead of destroying me, Nicholas said. You're the woman who shot James Mitchell to protect me. You're the woman He stopped. The words caught in his throat. The woman you what? The woman I love, he finished quietly. Despite everything. Despite the lies and the manipulation and the fact that you were sent to kill me, I love you. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Don't say that. Please don't say that. True. Because people I love die, Nicholas. Everyone I've ever cared about ends up dead because of who I am, what I am. I'm poison. I destroy everything I touch. You haven't destroyed me yet. She pulled her hand away from his. But I will. It's what I do. Before he could respond, the motion sensors around the cabin started beeping. Nicholas moved to the window and cursed at what he saw through the night vision scope. At least 20 men moving through the trees, armed and coordinated, closing in on their position from all sides. How did they find us? Anya was already moving, grabbing weapons and ammunition with practiced efficiency. Oh no. Nicholas checked the security monitors, counting muzzle flashes and tactical movements. These aren't Russians or FBI. Look at their equipment, their formation. Anya studied the screens and her face went pale. Bratva. They're here for both of us. Why? It's because I stole something from them before I came to New York, something they want back very badly. She pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. No bigger than her thumb. Complete files on Operation Snowfall. Names, dates, locations of every Bratva operation in North America for the past 10 years. Jesus Christ, Anya. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd try to talk me out of using it. She moved to the weapons cache, pulling out an assault rifle with the ease of someone who'd done this before. This was my insurance policy. If the Romano takedown went bad, if I got burned, I could trade this information for safe passage out of the country. And now they know I have it, and they'll kill us both to get it back. She checked the rifle's action with mechanical precision, lest we give them something else they want more. Which is, she looked at him with eyes that held apologies for crimes not yet committed. You. The words hit him like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Nicholas Romano, heir to the family that's been skimming from Bratva operations for 20 years. They'd trade a dozen flash drives for the chance to make an example of you. She moved toward the back door, rifle at the ready. If I turn you over to them, they'll let me walk away. Will you? The question hung between them like a blade poised to fall. Outside, the sound of boots crunching through snow grew closer. Anya's finger rested on the rifle's safety, and Nicholas realized he was holding his breath. 3 days ago I would have, she said finally. 3 days ago, you were just another target, another step in a plan I'd been building for 5 years. But now you're the first person since Amelia who's looked at me and seen something worth saving. She turned the rifle toward the window away from him, said, no, I won't trade you for my freedom. But that means we're both probably going to die here tonight. Nicholas felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace and everything to do with the woman standing beside him, choosing him over survival. Maybe not. He moved to his father's old desk and pulled out a leather portfolio filled with documents and photographs. My father kept records of every deal, every betrayal, every skeleton in every closet, including detailed information about Bratva operations that even they don't know he had. Anya's eyes widened as she flipped through the files. This is intelligence on their entire East Coast network. Operations they thought were completely secure. Leverage, Nicholas said. We trade this for safe passage, but we do it together, or not at all. She looked at him with something that might have been wonder. You'd trust me to negotiate with them? After everything I've done? You chose to save me instead of destroying me. You killed James to protect me. You're here with me now, instead of running. He cupped her face in his hands, feeling the wetness of tears on her cheeks. Yes, I trust you. The sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. They moved apart, weapons ready, as figures in black tactical gear poured through the windows. Nicholas counted at least 8 men, all armed with automatic weapons, all wearing the kind of body armor that meant they weren't planning to take prisoners. Drop your weapons, the leader called out in accented English. We only want the girl and the information. Surrender peacefully, and the man lives. Bullshit, Anya called back. If you wanted him alive, you wouldn't have brought a kill team. Perhaps you are right. The leader's laugh was cold as winter wind. But this way is quicker. The firefight erupted in a symphony of muzzle flashes and splintering wood. Out. Nicholas dove behind the couch as bullets chewed through the furniture around him. Across the room, Anya moved like a dancer, flowing from cover to cover as she picked off targets. With surgical precision, she was magnificent and terrifying, every movement calculated for maximum efficiency. This wasn't the scared girl or the manipulative spy, or even the woman who'd confessed her love. This was a weapon forged by tragedy and tempered by years of violence. And watching her work was like watching deadly poetry in motion. But there were too many of them, and they kept coming. For every man she dropped, another appeared at a different window. Nicholas emptied his clip into a figure moving through the kitchen, then cursed as his rifle jammed. We need to move, Anya shouted over the gunfire. There are too many. Tunnel! Nicholas called back. My father built an escape route through the basement. They fought their way toward the cellar stairs, covering each other with the practiced coordination of soldiers who'd served together for years instead of lovers, who'd known each other for days. At the top of the stairs, Nicholas turned back to see flames licking at the cabin's walls. Someone had thrown incendiary grenades. Go, he told Anya. I'll hold them here, like hell. We stick together. One of us needs to survive this, to tell the world what really happened in Prague, to make sure James's crimes don't get buried with him. Then we both survive. She kissed him hard, desperate, tasting like gunpowder and tears. Because I'm done running from the things I love. They disappeared into the tunnel as the cabin collapsed behind them, a funeral pyre for the lies they'd built their lives on. In the darkness beneath the earth, holding hands as they ran toward an uncertain future, Nicholas realized that sometimes love wasn't about saving someone. Sometimes it was about choosing to burn together rather than freeze alone. 6 months later. Nicholas sat in a cafe in Prague, reading a newspaper article about the largest organized crime bust in FBI history. Romano Industries had been dissolved, its assets liquidated to compensate victims of 3 decades of money laundering and extortion. The Bratva network had been decimated, dozens of operations shut down, hundreds of arrests made. The woman across from him looked different now. Her hair was shorter, darker, cut in a style that framed her face in ways that emphasized the sharp intelligence in her green eyes. She wore a simple blue dress and no makeup, but she was more beautiful than ever, because she was finally completely real. "Any regrets?" she asked. Folding her own newspaper, Russian publication that detailed the arrest of 12 FSB agents for corruption and conspiracy, about destroying my father's empire, about bringing down the Bratva, about spending 6 months in protective custody while federal prosecutors built their cases? Nicholas shook his head. None at all. What about the money, the power, the life you could have had if you'd never met me? He reached across the table to take her hand, noting the small scar on her ring finger where she'd removed the tracking device the FSB had implanted years ago. That wasn't a life. It was just existence wrapped in expensive suits. And this is a chance to build something new. He gestured around them at the bustling cafe, at the city that had nearly destroyed her family, but was now the place they'd chosen to start over. Clean money, legitimate business, no blood on our hands. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. The architectural firm is doing well, better than well. Turns out people are willing to pay a lot for buildings designed by someone who used to launder money for the mob. You think it gives the structure's character, and your partner? It's Rajan is brilliant. My Tate trained, completely ethical. And she only agreed to work with me because she saw the FBI files that proved I was cooperating fully with their investigation. Nicholas lifted his coffee cup in a mock toast. 2 criminal rehabilitation programs. They sat in comfortable silence, watching tourists and locals stream past the cafe windows. It had taken months of debriefing, testimony, and psychological evaluation before they'd been cleared to leave protective custody. Months of learning how to be normal people instead of weapons shaped by violence and revenge. "I have something for you," Anya said suddenly, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small velvet box and placed it on the table between them. Nicholas stared at it, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. "Is that what I think it is? Open it and find out." Inside the box wasn't a ring, but a small silver locket. He opened it to find 2 photographs, one of a young girl with honey-colored hair and laughing eyes, the other of a tall man and woman embracing beside a fountain he recognized as being in this very city. "Katerina Volkov," she said softly, standing in Wenceslas Square with her parents on the last normal day of her life. "That's who I was before Prague, before the FSB, before Emma Clark and Amelia Volkov and Anya and all the other masks I've worn, and who are you now? I'm still figuring that out." She paused, then smiled with something that looked like hope. "But I know I want to figure it out with you." Nicholas closed the locket and put it in his pocket, next to his heart. "Katerina Kate," she corrected. "I think I'd like to be Kate now. Kate Romano, if you'll have me." The proposal was backwards, unconventional. Delivered by a woman who'd spent years learning to kill instead of learning to love, it was perfect. "I'll have you," he said, standing up and pulling her to her feet. "For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. You're not supposed to say the vows until the ceremony." "Who says we need a ceremony? We've already been through hell together. That's got to count for something," she laughed. The sound like music in the Prague afternoon, and kissed him in front of God and tourists and the ghosts of their former selves. When they broke apart, she was crying again, but this time the tears were made of joy instead of grief. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you, and I'm not sorry anymore." "I love you too, Kate Romano." They walked away from the cafe hand in hand, leaving behind empty coffee cups and old newspapers full of stories about people they used to be. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, possibility, the challenge of building a life based on truth instead of lies. It wouldn't be easy. They both carried scars that would never fully heal, memories that would always haunt their dreams. But they would carry them together, and that made all the difference. 6 blocks away, in a small chapel that had stood for 500 years, an elderly priest smiled as he watched a young couple examine the marriage license requirements posted on his door. He'd seen many kinds of love in his decades of service, but rarely had he seen two people look at each other with such fierce devotion, such desperate gratitude for having found their way home. He made a note to keep his evening free, some love. Stories begin with fairy tale meetings and perfect timing. Others begin with lies and betrayal and blood on marble floors. But the best ones, the ones that last, begin with the choice to save each other from the people they used to be. In Prague, in a city that had witnessed both the destruction and resurrection of dreams, Nicholas Romano and Kate Volkov chose each other over their ghosts. They chose love over revenge, hope over despair, truth over the beautiful lies that had nearly destroyed them both. It was, they decided, the best choice either of them had ever made. The end.